Good morning, friends. It's good to be with you. Please pray with me. Teaching God, we want to learn your ways. We want to learn the ways of forgiveness. We want to learn the ways of grace. We want to learn your ways of love. God, we want to learn your ways. Meet us here. Speak your truth in love and help us listen. Amen. Our Hebrew scripture is from Psalm 119, verses 9 through 16. How can young people keep their way pure? By guarding it according to your word. With my whole heart I seek you. Do not let me stray from your commandments. I treasure your word in my heart so that I may not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Lord, teach me your statutes. With my lips I declare all the ordinances of your mouth. I delight in the way of your decrees as much as in all riches. I will meditate on your precepts and fix my eyes on your ways. I will delight in your statutes. I will not forget your word. And from the Gospel of Matthew, the 18th chapter, beginning with the 15th verse. Jesus says and teaches, if another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you 7 times 70 times. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It never ceases to amaze me how periodically people join the church thinking in a naive way that they have left the imperfect, money-grabbing, power-hungry secular world and entered into some holy monastic community where everyone is good and kind and loving, and no one ever gossips or spreads rumors or disagrees about anything. When this happens, I usually watch to see how long it takes before their whole idyllic image of the church comes tumbling down like a tower of stacked cards. Usually all it takes is serving on one committee or doing one job for the church. Whatever it is, sooner or later it happens, and then I watch what comes next, either total loss of enthusiasm and withdrawal, maybe a little time away to regroup and reevaluate. Maybe some more church hopping, see if the grass is greener in other sheep pastures. Always in search of that ever elusive perfect church. Or sadly, with some, it's complete abandonment of the church and a return back to the more predictable secular world that, while difficult, doesn't disappoint. There was a man who suffered a shipwreck and was marooned on an island all by himself for 2 years. When a ship finally came to rescue him, the captain saw 3 huts he had built. The captain asked why he had 3 huts when he was all alone for 2 years. Well, the man pointed to the first hut and said, "That's my house. I have to have a place to live. And the second hut is my church. I've got to have a place to worship and pray to God." "Okay, I understand those," said the captain, "but what's this third hut?" "Oh, that hut? That's where I used to go to church." On a more serious and realistic note, a friend told me about a visitor to their church. She had heard it was a carry-in lunch that Sunday, so she made orange jello with chunks of mandarin oranges and cream cheese throughout. She even had to check during the chilling to make sure the oranges and cheese were distributed evenly before the jello set. When she got to the kitchen, the church matriarch who ran the church kitchen like an autocrat said, "I know you're new here, so I see how you might have not known, but in this church we never mix fruit, much less cheese, in our jello." And she scraped the mandarin orange jello into the trash. Wow. There are no wars in the church like kitchen wars, my friend said. And no one challenged the kitchen czar or even noticed the woman leave. But Presbyterians shouldn't be so naive about church disputes. We began our history splitting from the Roman Catholic Church in the 1500s, and we've had numerous splits ever since. After all, our founder, John Calvin, taught about the total depravity of humanity. It's good Calvinist doctrine. Total depravity says that even our best efforts are clouded by sin. We are unable to do anything purely good on our own because our sin is always there. Pride and power will always creep in somewhere. And Henry Ward Beecher said, "I don't need John Calvin to tell me about human total depravity. I have my own congregation to show me that." Some who join the church and find real human beings as members might think Jesus was misquoted. He must have really said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there's bound to be an argument." But Matthew portrays Jesus as being realistic about the church, just as he was realistic about life. Though he was fully human, he wasn't fully naive. Jesus knew that there were going to be disagreements and fights when well-meaning people got together in his name. And he knew it wouldn't be easy. And so he sets up a way of dealing with disputes and disagreements and hurt feelings and arguments within the church, because he knew we'd need a strategy for what was bound to happen. Just as in marriage, the issue is not whether or not there would be disagreements and hurt feelings. The issue is whether folks would fight fair or not, whether folks would seek to maintain their relationship as they resolved their conflicts. A marriage, a friendship, a church are a lot alike in this area. You can't live in the honeymoon stage forever in any of them. But as you live through and work through life and disagreements, you can grow to a richer and fuller depth of intimacy than ever experienced in the first year of marriage, because of the honesty and understanding and deep relationship that carries you through the crisis moments and strengthens rather than weakens your relationship over time. I didn't start this church. I came to this church when most of you were here already and had a history of working through your challenges as a community that has made your relationships and your decency to each other stronger. So what is the strategy of Jesus? First of all, Jesus says, if you feel hurt by another person, go to him or her quietly and directly. It is the one who has been wronged, who has been sinned against, who should approach the other. Otherwise, the other may not know you are offended. I recently had a family member tell me how I had hurt her feelings 15 years ago, and she was still hurt by it. She never told me. I never knew she was hurt. I didn't remember what I had done 15 years later, but she did. from her perspective. If she had come to me before 15 years of anger had simmered and stewed and boiled over, we might have reconciled more easily. I was left wondering if I could trust that person. What's the next thing I might do to upset her for 15 years when I might never know about it? You've got a problem with someone in the church. You feel you've been wronged by someone who has hurt you. Deal with it directly. Don't embarrass the person in public. Deal with it one-on-one, in person, directly. Maybe coffee or lunch. Go to that person quietly and let them know what's going on in order to heal the breach in your relationship. But that seems so hard for us to do. We'd rather talk behind another person's back, tear them down without them ever knowing about it, talk about what they've done without giving them the chance to respond in person themselves. We'd often rather talk to 20 other people about how we were wronged rather than talk to the person ourselves. That is so destructive to relationships in the church. It causes so many misunderstandings and hurt feelings. If you've got a problem with someone and you don't have the gumption to go to that person yourself, then it'd be better to keep it to yourself. Keep your mouth shut than to gossip about them behind their back. More harm has been done to others with the opening salvo, "I shouldn't be telling you this, but did you know?" than with any other line in the church. While the worst thing is to hurt another by complaining about them, the next would be to just ignore it and keep your mouth shut, which usually just allows it to fester. Jesus says it's up to you to speak to the person when you've been hurt. One of the worst things about every church is that we try so hard to be nice. We want to get along and not upset anyone, so we let things go. But then things you couldn't get away with one day in a business setting, we let go for years. You don't have to be mean, but you sure don't have to be nice and let bad behavior go. Trying to be nice and just get along nicely always allows terrorists to have the upper hand in the church and in this country. And I mean political terrorists too. Niceness in the church allows terrorists to have the upper hand. How long is the nice church going to let the kitchen jello terrorist get by with her deplorable behavior? Until finally someone speaks up and talks to that kitchen matriarch directly. It may not be the way we're used to functioning, and we may be much better at talking about a person than talking with a person, but we are called to work harder to bridge the gap between the way we are and the way God calls us to be. It's our job to speak the truth in love to each other. And it's our job to try to heal any broken relationship in the church directly, personally, privately, individually. For remember that in going to this person who wronged you, your goal is to heal the rift and bridge the broken relationship between you. Your goal isn't to prove you're right and they're wrong. Your goal isn't to lash out with vengeance or violence or retribution. When your goal is when someone has sinned against you and put a rift in your relationship, to try and heal that wound by healing the relationship itself. And Jesus knows that straight talk and a private conversation seeking to heal wounds is the best way to resolve a conflict. But Jesus also knows that it doesn't always work. Sometimes people get so defensive when you approach them with your perspective that there is little two-way communication. And if straight talk in love doesn't work in resolving the problem, then get a few others involved. Try to settle your disagreement with a few wise, patient, loving friends. for it often helps to have the input and the perspective of those not as emotionally involved as you. But the goal is not to gang up on the other person. The goal is to get the input of others so that you can reach an agreement. The goal is to help to heal the relationship. I've been a part of meetings like that many times, and I hope some of the elders on this session have as well. But that sometimes doesn't work either. If having wise ones mediate your dispute doesn't work, then take it to the church. And in our system, that would be taking it to the session, the elders who have been elected to seek God's will for this congregation. And the session would seek to work out a solution. Our Presbyterian Book of Order shows us how to organize the church, make decisions, and work with other Presbyterians in seeking to faithfully follow Jesus as disciples. And there are 3 sections to the Book of Order: the form of government, the form of worship, and church discipline. We have a whole section on discipline, how we get along and hold each other accountable. There are only 3 sections in the Book of Order, and one of those is discipline. And in this context, reading Matthew's account of Jesus' instructions about correcting each other in the faith community is often heard judgmentally. And we are appalled by the history of Christianity's past excesses and authoritarian moralism, like parading individuals in front of the church and pointing out some moral failing they have, as if those who are casting the stones aren't sinners themselves. And there's a history to all religions making myself feel better by pointing out how bad another person is. But that is not what this passage or our rules for discipline is about. We link maintaining a relationship and challenging ourselves and others to do better. Recently, there was a dispute between a pastor and the congregation in a church in our presbytery. Measures were taken by the session and the pastor to work together. And when that failed, a commission from the presbytery worked for a year with the pastor and the church trying to heal the relationship. Of course, some members wanted the pastor and others said it needed to end, and it was dividing the church too. In the end, the pastor and the church reached a severance agreement. The pastor was censured by the presbytery, and counseling was required for the pastor before another call could be sought. As an outsider who wasn't involved, it seemed every avenue was taken to maintain the relationship, but in the end, the relationship needed to end. And maybe that's how Jesus ended the process. When someone feels wronged by another, if going to the individual directly, taking 2 witnesses along, going before the whole church doesn't heal the broken relationship, then Jesus says, treat that person as a Gentile or tax collector. If they don't want to do what it takes to be part of the community, then give them what they want. Let them go. But remember that treating someone like a Gentile or tax collector doesn't mean hating them or taking retribution on them, which is why I recoil when I hear a leader say, I am your retribution. Jesus loved Gentiles and tax collectors and called them to follow him in the church. Treating someone as a Gentile or tax collector doesn't mean to kick them out of the church in anger. Matthew was a tax collector, and Paul took the church to the Gentiles. On the contrary, it means to seek ways to keep inviting them in, but allowing them to go if they want to go. I've had members try to hold me hostage to something that I knew was wrong for the church to do. And they said, if you do this, I'm going to leave the church. And I often think, what makes you think that's a threat? But I keep my mouth shut. And I treat the person as a tax collector and a Gentile, seeking to invite them to continue to follow Jesus. In a lot of ways, it's a real nuisance to belong to a family. It'd be so much easier if we were just a bunch of individuals loosely bound together by similar beliefs, but whose affairs remained an essentially private matter between us and God. But according to Jesus, there's no such thing as privacy in the family of God. Our life together is the chief means God has chosen for being with us. It's when 2 or 3 are gathered together. And our life together is the place where we are comforted, confronted, tested, and redeemed by God through one another. It's the place where we come to know God or flee from God's presence, depending on how we come to know or flee from one another. And when Peter asked Jesus, "How many times should I forgive someone who has sinned against me?" Peter looks for a loophole. "How about 7 times, Jesus? That sounds like a lot." And Jesus says, not just 7 times, but 70 times 7. My friends, we know that community, whether it's home, work, family, or country, is never served when we play nice or sugarcoat controversy. Community is never served when we build factions, perpetuate gossip, and let anger and frustration, retribution, and revenge fester. Community is never served when inappropriate and destructive behavior is not held accountable. So maybe Matthew, with his get it all out strategy, with his advice to stop the brooding and confront the destructive behavior early and cleanly, has got the right idea. When 2 or 3 are gathered together to confront differences and controversies squarely and lovingly, maybe that's when Christ is in the midst of them and in the midst of us. Amen.